The cold white light struck straight into my eyes, sending a sharp ache through my skull. The only sound echoing around me was the steady, mechanical beeping of the heart monitor. I tried to move my arm, but it felt impossibly heavy, as if weighed down by 100 stones. My breathing was shallow, the bitter taste of metal thick on my tongue. I knew I was in the ICU after an emergency surgery that had dragged me back from the edge of death. As my eyes adjusted, the first figure I saw was a woman sitting on my left. She wore an elegant navy dress, her face painted with meticulous precision until it looked void of emotion. That was my mother, Martha. Resting on her lap was a glossy brown leather folder, something that looked like it belonged at a board meeting, utterly out of place in a suffocating hospital room. To my right stood my father, Richard, arms folded, eyes glued to a crack in the tile floor, as though it mattered more than the daughter who had just clawed her way back from death. Not a glance, not a question. I tried to open my mouth, but only a raspy breath escaped. My mind screamed with questions. Where's my phone? Why am I here? Where's Ethan? Yet no sound came out. A nurse passed by, a kind-eyed Hispanic man who leaned down to adjust my fore and said softly, "You're back with us, Julia. Don't strain yourself." He gave my hand a reassuring squeeze, then pulled the curtain shut, leaving me alone with them. The moment the door closed, my mother rose to her feet. A thin, sharp smile curved her lips, devoid of warmth. "This won't take long," she said in an even tone, as if addressing a business partner rather than the daughter who had just survived surgery. She opened the folder and drew out a stack of papers stamped with the logo of the company I had built with 8 years of sweat and sleepless nights. My chest tightened, not from the incision but from what I saw. "This is just temporary," she continued, her voice light, almost soothing. "A power of attorney. You rest while your father and I take care of the business. Just one signature." At the bottom of the page I saw the line, "Granting full authority including the right to sell to Martha and Richard Evans." A stabbing pain shot through my chest. I shook my head slowly. My throat burned, but I forced out a whisper, "No." My father finally looked up, his eyes cold as steel locking onto mine. "You're choosing your own suffering," he pronounced, each word like a sentence. I trembled, trying to lift my hand, but my mother shoved a pen between my fingers, pressing it down. "Just sign, Julia. Then you can sleep. Stop being stubborn." I jerked my hand as hard as I could, and the pen clattered onto the bed. My lips formed the words, breath ragged but still clear enough, "Never." Without warning, my mother leaned down, her icy hand yanking the oxygen tube from my nose. The shock hit me like lightning. My mouth gaped, but no air came in. My throat clenched as though an invisible fist was strangling me. The monitor shrieked with frantic alarms, the sound pressing death closer. I thrashed, fingers clawing at the sheets, vision swimming. My father stood motionless, arms still crossed, offering no help. My mother tilted her head, voice dropping to a cold murmur. "You've always been hard-headed, even when it kills you." My palms smacked weakly against the bed, every ounce of strength draining. Only when the machine's alarms nearly peaked did she reconnect the oxygen line. Cold air rushed into my lungs, painful yet cruelly merciful. She smoothed the blanket as though nothing had happened. My father leaned close, hissing through clenched teeth. "You'd better reconsider before it's too late." They dropped the heavy folder onto my chest and strolled out of the room. The door clicked shut. Their footsteps faded, leaving me paralyzed, body shaking from both the surgical wound and a deeper agony no medicine could measure. And in that moment I could no longer deny the truth I had refused to face. My parents were willing to let me die as long as it meant seizing the multimillion-dollar company I had built. The room still felt crushing, the folder lying heavy on my chest like a weight that stole my breath. The monitor slowly returned to a steady rhythm, but my heart had never pounded harder. I knew clearly if no one walked in right now I might have let go. The door swung open. A familiar figure appeared, silver hair tied neatly back, her frame thin but unshakably strong. My grandmother, Eleanor, strode in, eyes sharp and alert. Her hands carried the faint scent of lavender, the same I had breathed in every time she held me as a child. "Julia." Her voice cracked with panic, then instantly hardened as she spotted the folder pressed against me. She hit the call button firmly, her tone commanding, "I want someone stationed here immediately. Don't take your eyes off my granddaughter." A nurse rushed in, checked my oxygen line and vitals. His eyes flickered with concern when he saw the red mark on my nose and the trace where the tube had been pulled, but he said nothing. He simply nodded at Eleanor before hurrying out to get more help. She sat beside me, her veined hand gripping mine tightly. Her skin was wrinkled but warm, chasing away the cold steel air of the hospital room. She whispered, "You're not alone. I'm here." Tears threatened to spill, but my eyes only glistened. I managed to lift a finger toward the folder. She followed my gesture, immediately understanding. Without a word, she opened it, skimmed a few lines and froze. Then her expression sharpened like a blade. Power of attorney to sell the entire company? Despicable. She snapped the folder shut, her voice firm. "They want to turn you into a shadow." "Never, Julia." I gave the slightest nod, my body trembling from weakness. She placed her palm on my forehead, her own eyes wet but her voice steady. "You built this company with your own 2 hands. No one has the right to steal it, not even your parents. Listen to me, Julia, what you need isn't their forgiveness. You need a lawyer." I met her gaze. In her eyes I saw no pity, only resolve. I knew she had endured too much pain from her own daughter, my mother, but she was still here, still protecting me. That night she never left my side. When the hallway lights dimmed, she sat in the chair, hand gripping mine. Every time I flinched from pain, she tightened her hold, reminding me, "You're alive and you will rise again. Not for them, but for yourself." Near midnight, as sleep weighed heavy on my eyelids, she pulled a small object from her worn fabric bag. A leather notebook, its edges frayed with age. She opened it gently to reveal pages filled with my handwriting from when I was 18. My very first business plan, messy numbers, crude sketches of the logo I once dreamed of. She said softly, "Do you remember? They laughed at you, but I kept this. Because I knew one day you'd need proof of whose work this really was." I stared at the notebook, my heart tightening. She had quietly preserved every fragment of my journey, while my parents only waited to bury it. Dawn crept in, the sound of distant ambulances floating through the air. I woke from a fitful sleep to find her still there, dark circles under her eyes but a gentle smile on her lips. "Today," she said, "we'll call someone. Marcus, the lawyer your grandfather trusted. He never worked for the richest, only for those who were wronged. He'll stand with you." I couldn't say much, but for the first time since opening my eyes in that ICU, I felt peace. She hadn't just saved me from despair, she'd armed me with weapons, faith and justice. As she poured me warm water, her eyes were resolute. "They think you're fragile, that a hospital bed makes you easy to break. But they forget you carry my blood. Julia, this time it's not their story to write. It's yours." I closed my eyes, letting her words carve deep into me. And in that moment I knew, the betrayal of my parents would not bury me. It would ignite the fire that made me rise. On the 3rd morning after I was moved out of the ICU, Grandma Eleanor walked in with a tall, lean man in his mid-40s, wearing a simple gray suit but carrying sharp eyes. She introduced him. "This is Marcus, the lawyer your grandfather worked with years ago. He knows this family well, and more importantly, he stands on the side of justice." Marcus shook my hand firmly, his gaze holding no pity. He sat in the chair by my hospital bed and opened a thick case file. "Julia, I've reviewed the papers your mother tried to force you to sign. What I found is even worse than you think." My chest tightened, but I stayed quiet to listen. He pulled out a packet stamped by the Texas Business Registry. "While you were unconscious in the ICU, documents were filed. They claim you voluntarily transferred full control of the company to Martha and Richard Evans due to health incapacity." I looked up, horrified. Marcus nodded in confirmation. "It's all been officially recorded. But there's one problem. The signature here," he pointed to the line at the bottom, "doesn't match the signature on your tax filings from last year." I had a handwriting expert compare them. The preliminary result: forgery. Grandma squeezed my hand while Marcus went on. "Not only that. I requested hospital hallway footage from the ICU floor. At the exact time the notarization was filed, you were in a coma. And your parents were seen entering the room with that leather folder." A chill ran down my spine, the memory of my mother shoving a pen into my hand flooding back. Marcus pulled out another document, his tone steady but firm. "I also spoke with the notary who signed this. At first he denied it, but under pressure he admitted. The signature was verified remotely without you present. The one who submitted the paperwork was Martha Evans. In the silence of that room, each word hit like a gavel strike. There was no denying it anymore. The bare truth was laid out before me. My parents had orchestrated a legal scheme to strip me of my company while I lay defenseless. Marcus leaned back, his eyes locking on mine. Julia, this isn't just a family dispute. This crosses into criminal territory. Forged signatures, fraudulent notarization, asset theft. We have grounds to sue and petition the court to freeze any changes to the company's structure. I drew a deep breath, my lungs still aching but my heart pounding fast. Grandma placed her hand firmly on my shoulder. You hear that, child? We're not begging them for mercy anymore. We're fighting with the law. Marcus laid out the plan. Step 1, I'll file an emergency motion to stop any company transactions. At the same time, I'll push for a criminal investigation into the forgery. Most important, Julia, is that you must stand as the plaintiff. Not as their daughter, but as the rightful founder and CEO. I nodded. For the first time since leaving the ACU, I felt the weight lift from my chest. Not because the pain had gone away, but because I finally had a way to fight back. Before leaving, Marcus handed me a USB drive. This holds the hospital hallway video and the audio recording of the notary's admission. Keep it so you know you're not imagining this. The truth is on your side. I clutched the small device in my palm, feeling it like a blade of steel. I looked at Grandma, who gave me a firm nod, her eyes brimming with faith. That night, I sat on the hospital bed, the glow of the monitors casting faint green flickers on the wall. I plugged the USB into the hospital laptop. The screen lit up. My mother opening the folder, my father standing guard at the door. My chest froze. Then came the notary's voice. She said Julia was too weak to appear in person, so I notarized it remotely. I shut the screen, tears spilling, but this time not from despair. They were born of rage. 1 week after Marcus brought the evidence of forgery, I was discharged from the hospital and moved into Grandma Eleanor's small suburban house on the outskirts of Dallas to recover. The old wooden home with its wide porch and lavender garden became my temporary fortress. Here I began piecing the truth back together. In the evenings, while Grandma prepared ginger tea in the kitchen, I opened my laptop and logged into an admin account no one else knew about. Last year, when the company expanded, I had quietly built a hidden security portal in case of emergencies. Now it was my key. The screen filled with financial reports, but not under the familiar name Evans Tech Solutions. Instead, I froze as I read, Heritage Global Wealth. A gaudy gold logo had replaced the minimalist symbol I had drawn as a college student. Scrolling through the staff roster, I saw Martha Evans, Chief Executive Officer. Richard Evans, Chief Financial Officer. My own name appeared only as Founder Emeritus. A hollow title. It didn't stop there. I uncovered a chain of large transactions. Nearly $500,000 had been funneled into a fund called College Endowment, but no record suggested it was for scholarships or charity. Every trail led to a personal account. My fingers clenched against the keyboard, heart like ice. My parents didn't just want control. They were rewriting the company's identity, twisting my sweat, my ideas, and my sleepless nights into their private asset to flaunt. Late at night, Grandma walked in, setting a cup of tea in front of me. She looked directly into my eyes, her voice steady yet tender. Julia, don't see this through the eyes of a daughter. See it through the eyes of a CEO. If you keep hoping they'll change, you'll only get hurt again. But if you fight as a leader, you'll take it all back. I swallowed hard, but her words steeled me. She was right. For years, I had tried to earn their love, yet they never saw me as human. I no longer needed their affection. I needed justice. From that day forward, I began planning my counterattack. Each morning, after short walks around the yard to regain strength, I spent hours organizing evidence. I compiled emails, bank statements, even internal security footage Marcus had extracted. Every tiny detail could become a blade. Marcus visited that weekend, bringing a handwriting forensics expert and a forensic accountant. They gathered around Grandma's oak dining table, stacks of files spread wide, discussing strategies for hours. I listened, took notes, and trained myself to keep emotions at bay. No more tears, only resolve. Grandma drifted in occasionally, refilling coffee, then quietly leaning against the doorway. Whenever our eyes met, she gave a small nod, reminding me I wasn't alone. One evening, while combing through data, I found a hidden file buried in an old folder. It was a 5-year strategic plan signed by both Martha and Richard. My breath caught as I read, "Fully transfer company assets into the Evans Family Trust, eliminating all executive authority of Julia Evans within 12 months." I sat frozen before the screen, fury rising like wildfire. I printed the file and laid it on the table. Grandma picked it up, her eyes turning uncharacteristically cold. She said slowly, "This proves they planned this long ago. You have no choice but to strike back. But remember, Julia, don't let hate cloud you. Fight with facts, with the law. Only then will your victory last." I nodded, marking every detail on the document. In that moment, I no longer felt like a betrayed daughter, but like a CEO deceived by crooked partners. The shift in mindset brought an unexpected calm. That night, I reopened the leather notebook Grandma had saved for me, placing it beside the fraudulent corporate filings. On one side was the dream I had as a young woman, on the other their ruthless scheme. Between those two extremes, I had to choose my path. And I had chosen. I turned to Grandma, my voice low but firm. "I won't beg them anymore. I'll take everything back through the law. This isn't about family anymore. This is a CEO's battlefield." Grandma smiled, a mix of pride and relief. She placed her hand on my shoulder and whispered, "Exactly. And you will win, Julia. Because this time, you've learned not to ask for love, but to claim justice." One quiet afternoon, as I was sorting files on Grandma Eleanor's oak table, the doorbell rang. She opened it and a hesitant young voice asked, "Can I see Julia for a moment?" I stepped into the living room and froze. It was Lena, my 19-year-old half-sister, her blonde hair tied in a messy ponytail, clutching a worn backpack to her chest. We had never been close. Her mother, my father's first wife, died young, and Lena grew up in the family's cold indifference. I never imagined she would come to me. Lena stepped inside, eyes torn between fear and courage. Grandma poured her tea, then said gently, "Go ahead, child. This is a safe place." Lena set her bag down, her hands trembling. Her voice was small but clear. I heard your mother and Richard talking. I know what they want." My heart pounded. Lena took a breath and continued. "Yesterday they thought I was upstairs studying, but I was right outside the kitchen door. I heard everything. Your mother laughed and said they finally got rid of you without the press finding out. Richard said the company is officially the Evans family's asset, now not yours. They even called you a workhorse, saying you did all the labor so they could enjoy the rewards." Every word cut into me like a knife. I had known their betrayal, but hearing it confirmed by their laughter shattered something deeper. Lena lowered her head. "I know I don't matter in that family. They kept me out of obligation but never as one of their own. I'm scared if they find out I overheard, I'll lose my place to stay. But I can't stay silent while they destroy you." Grandma laid a steady hand on her shoulder, her voice calm but firm. "You did the right thing, Lena. Sometimes the truth needs a witness. And you'll never have to be afraid here." I stepped closer, taking Lena's hand. "Are you sure? If you testify, they'll be furious. You could be pushed out." Her blue eyes met mine, shimmering. "If I need to, I will. I have nothing left to lose, Julia. At least this once, I want to stand with someone who deserves it." Her words lodged in my throat. This 19-year-old girl, once treated like a shadow, had become the first spark of light in my battle. I nodded, gripping her hand tight. "I promise, if you step into this with me, I'll never let you face it alone." Marcus arrived that evening. He listened to Lena's account, taking down every detail. "This testimony," he said, "combined with our documents and footage, will be priceless internal evidence. It not only proves asset theft, but also reveals deliberate intent." Lena nodded, though her hands still trembled. I could see the fear in her eyes, but also the flame of courage. That night, when the house was quiet, I sat on the porch with Lena. The breeze carried the lavender scent from the garden. I asked softly, "Do you regret saying it out loud?" She shook her head, smiling faintly. "I regret staying silent for so long. But this time, I want to do the right thing. At least I know I'm not like them." I squeezed her hand, a swell of emotion rising. Sorrow, gratitude, and a bond one had never expected. In that moment, I realized this fight was no longer just mine and Grandma Eleanor's. I had another ally, someone my parents never saw coming. Lena gazed into the night and whispered, "They think you're weak, but I know, they're the ones about to break." I stayed silent, but inside, a new determination surged. My parents had sown betrayal, but in doing so, they had created an alliance they could never anticipate. And with truth on my side, I was ready to take the next step. On Monday morning, after many sleepless nights, Marcus and I sat in Grandma Eleanor's study. The oak table was buried under stacks of papers. Handwriting analyses, hospital camera footage, the notary's recorded admission, and Lena's detailed testimony. I knew it was time to strike back. Marcus drafted a 10-page document, a formal legal warning. Every sentence was sharp, precise, and cold, demanding Martha and Richard Evans immediately cease all attempts to seize control and restore full executive authority to me. At the end of the letter, he attached irrefutable evidence. When I signed my name at the bottom, my hand no longer trembled. 2 days later, they received the letter. Their reaction came faster than I expected. My phone rang nonstop. Dozens of calls from unknown numbers mixed with threatening texts. I didn't pick up. Marcus reminded me, "Let the law speak for you." As he predicted, just 3 days later, a court officer knocked on Grandma Eleanor's door and handed me a thick envelope. Inside was a lawsuit filed by Martha and Richard, titled, "Emergency Petition to Freeze Assets Due to Incapacity of Plaintiff." I flipped through the pages, blood rushing to my face. They accused me of delusional behavior, psychological instability after surgery, even claiming I couldn't manage personal finances. Worst of all, they requested that the court strip me of control and grant temporary management to Martha. I gave a bitter laugh. A familiar tactic: paint the daughter as unstable to cover their scheme. But this time I wasn't alone. At the temporary hearing, I entered the courtroom calm and composed. My hair tied neatly back, a simple navy suit, no makeup. I wanted everyone to see I had nothing to hide. Grandma Eleanor sat right behind me, her eyes shining with strength. Beside her was Lena, nervous but present, her very presence a declaration that she was ready to stand by me. Martha's attorney opened with polished words, stressing that Julia Evans is no longer mentally fit to run a multimillion-dollar company. He cited my medical records from surgery and ended with, "We request the court to freeze all assets to protect shareholder interests." The atmosphere was heavy. I rose, calmly handing my file to the clerk. My voice was clear, each word solid. "Your Honor, I have full evidence showing this petition is not only false, but a deliberate scheme to steal my company." I presented the evidence step by step. First, the hospital video. Martha and Richard entering the ICU with documents while I was unconscious. Next, the handwriting analysis, confirming the signatures were forged. Then the notary's audio confession, admitting he verified remotely at Martha's request. The courtroom buzzed with whispers. I wasn't done. Looking straight at Martha, I placed a USB on the judge's desk. This contains the direct testimony of my half-sister, Lena Evans. She overheard Martha and Richard admitting they removed me to seize the company. Lena stepped forward, her voice shaky but firm, recounting everything she had heard. Each word pierced through the lies they had spun. I saw Martha grip her chair, her face paling. When Lena finished, I turned to the judge. If this court freezes assets based on these lies, it means fraud triumphs over truth. But I believe our justice system does not allow that. The room went silent. The judge reviewed each piece of evidence, then looked up, her voice firm. Based on the current evidence, the court denies the request to freeze assets. Furthermore, this petition will be referred to the district attorney's office for investigation of possible forgery. I heard Richard's angry sigh across the aisle. Martha forced a smile, but her eyes burned with hatred. I knew they wouldn't stop. But at least I had won the first round. Stepping out of the courthouse, the Texas sun hit my face. For the first time in weeks, I breathed freely. Grandma wrapped me in a tight hug and Lena whispered, "You did it." I smiled faintly, but inside I stayed alert. I knew my parents too well. Being exposed had never made them retreat. This legal war was only beginning, and I had to be ready for the next strike, the one they would unleash without hesitation. The board meeting was set for a sweltering June morning. I walked into the glass tower in downtown Dallas, once my pride, now renamed by my parents' Heritage Global Wealth. The gaudy gold logo above the entrance cut like a blade, but I refused to let it shake me. Today I would turn the tide. The 12th floor conference room was vast, a long walnut table dominating the space, surrounded by leather chairs. Board members lined the seats, some restless, others expressionless. Martha and Richard had already arrived, dressed as if for a coronation. At their side was their lawyer, a smug middle-aged man. In front of each seat lay a packet, Julia Evans' resignation letter citing health issues. I glanced at mine, the signature line still blank. Martha's syrupy voice rang out, "We're here today to clarify the situation. Julia can no longer bear the burden and it's time for stable leadership." I sat calmly, placing a small laptop before me. My hand brushed the projector remote hidden in my pocket. I waited for her words to end, then rose. "Before the board decides, I have information that must be made public." The room fell silent. I pressed the button. The projector flickered on. And then Martha's voice filled the air. "She won't sign, but if we keep her in the ICU longer, everything will be ours." Her words rang out sharp, jolting several members upright. Then Richard's voice followed, cold, "Just report her unfit. The board will have no choice but to replace her." Shock rippled across the room. Martha shot to her feet, screaming, "This is illegal evidence. Julia, where did you—" I cut her off, clicking again. The notary's voice echoed, admitting he had notarized the papers remotely at Martha's request. Then the hospital footage appeared. My parents walking into my ICU room with documents. Finally, Lena's recorded testimony under Marcus's supervision. I heard them say Julia was just a tool for them to take the company. They laughed, saying they'd finally gotten rid of her without a trial. The audio ended. The silence that followed was suffocating. I faced the board. "This is the truth. If you still want me to sign, it means you're willing to ignore blatant theft." An older board member slowly rose. He tore the resignation letter in half, the ripping sound echoing like thunder. "I won't be part of this fraud." A woman followed, shredding hers. Then 2-3 more. Martha's face went pale. She shrieked, "This is theater. Julia's just playing for sympathy." But no one listened. A younger member, silent until now, spoke firmly, "We invested in this company because of Julia Evans' vision, not to become pawns in your greed." Richard slammed the table, snarling, "You're destroying this family." I met his eyes, voice unwavering. "No. You and Martha already did. I'm just exposing the truth." At the far end, Grandma Eleanor's proud eyes gleamed. Beside her, Lena gripped her hands together, her fear replaced by resolve. I knew this moment had changed everything. The meeting ended in chaos. Martha and Richard stormed out, faces drained of color. I didn't feel triumphant, only free. I was no longer the daughter desperate for love. I was a leader defending her dream. As I stepped into the hallway, Marcus approached, resting a hand on my shoulder. "You just did what most never dare. Lay the truth bare before everyone. The board will never forget this." I nodded slightly. Inside, I knew the war wasn't over. My parents wouldn't quit easily. But now the scales had finally tipped in my favor. 3 weeks after the board meeting, the shockwaves still rippled across Dallas. Headlines blared, "Couple plotted to steal daughter's company, chilling truth inside the ICU." Photos of Martha and Richard rushing out of the building made front-page news. No one saw them as successful entrepreneurs anymore, only as two greedy frauds exposed. Meanwhile, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Former shareholders sent messages of support, while new partners reached out to collaborate. A woman entrepreneur from Houston wrote, "Julia, you didn't just save your company, you showed us courage worth admiring." Her words reminded me I was no longer alone. My parents' fate was different. They were stripped of every board position, forced to relinquish control. Even their old business club acquaintances avoided them. I heard they sold their Highland Park mansion to cover legal debts and quietly moved to the suburbs. No one wanted to be associated with them anymore. The day I was officially reinstated as CO, Grandma Eleanor held my hand tightly, her eyes filled with pride and emotion. Lena stood beside her with a soft smile as if to say, "I knew you could do it." I walked into that boardroom chair not as a daughter seeking approval, but as the rightful founder leading my company back on course. Still, I didn't want this victory to be about revenge. Many nights I thought of the ICU, of how close I had come to losing everything, and of the countless young women who might be enduring the same, exploited by family, stripped of their voices. An idea took root and grew clear. A scholarship fund. I named it the Eleanor Fund after the grandmother who saved me. Its mission: to support young women from unstable homes, giving them the chance to pursue education and entrepreneurship without being chained by control. At the fund's launch, I stood on stage at the Dallas Convention Center. Behind me, a banner read, "Empower Her Future." The warm golden lights poured down and the hall grew quiet. I spoke simply. There was a time I thought I wouldn't live to tell this story. But because someone pulled me up, I can stand here today. The Eleanor Fund will be that hand for other young women, so they know real strength doesn't come from family permission, but from their own worth. The applause thundered. In the front row, I saw Grandma wiping away tears, Lena's face glowing beside her. In that moment, I understood. My scars finally had meaning. From then on, my company not only recovered but thrived. Yet what I cherished most were the handwritten letters from scholarship recipients. One girl wrote, "My family forced me to quit school to work, but your scholarship brought me back to class. Thank you for believing in people like me." My eyes blurred as I read. As for my parents, they never apologized. But it no longer mattered. They lost the one thing they craved most: power and prestige. And I had gained something far greater: freedom and my voice. One late afternoon, I went with Grandma to visit my grandfather's grave. I laid sunflowers, his favorite, the ones he said, "Never bow to the dark." Grandma whispered, "You did it, Julia. You broke free from that shadow." I smiled, looking up at the fiery sunset sky. I knew life would test me again. But never again would I let anyone else write my story. And if asked what I learned from it all, my answer would be simple. The greatest strength comes from daring to rise, even when everyone else wants to see you fall. Julia's story reflects a bitter truth that still exists in real life. Some people are willing to exploit their own flesh and blood to steal hard work, assets, and dreams. But her journey also proves that justice is never absent if we dare to rise. When Julia stopped seeking her parents' approval, she discovered her true strength within, turning pain into the drive to help other women. In reality, freedom doesn't always come from forgiveness, but from choosing independence. What do you think about Julia's journey and the way she stood against betrayal within her own family? Share your thoughts in the comments and don't forget to follow the channel for more powerful family stories.